So, welcome to the show, Dr. Keira Barr. She's the best-selling author of The Skin Whisperer and a fellow colleague of mine who I've been looking forward to speak to for such a long time. She's an integrative dermatologist who specializes in uh, managing women's optimization of their skin through hormone management and skincare and all the little tips and tricks that you need in order to be your best self. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Barr.
Well,
Keira.
yes, I know, right? Call me Kira. So it's
So
great.
glad to have you here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this too. I know we were
Yeah,
talking so much before, so we got to get our groove on now.
I know. We were chatting for about like a good 20 minutes before we even started recording. Yeah, so I do want you to share your story, about, how you got into dermatology and then how your life evolved and brought you into this space where you are now, because I think that a lot of people will really uh resonate with that and understand, why you're so passionate about what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think it's so funny how my life evolved. It's kind of like how my life fell apart and
It's a
it all
gift,
hit the fan.
right?
It is.
Everything that happens is a gift for a reason because it directs you to do something that's going to help other people. So that's where you are.
And that's really how I wound up in dermatology in the first place. And I didn't actually connect the dots going through medical school and then actually choosing my specialty until very recently, because I realized that I chose dermatology, being both a clinical dermatologist and a dermatopathologist, where you study skin, on the cellular level beneath the microscope, because as a kid, I was made fun of for what was on my skin. And at a very young age, I became so aware that skin could be a source of shame and embarrassment and humiliation, and feeling so uncomfortable in my skin and, wanting to retreat within it. And it's just, I found so much of what dermatology is in terms of the internal medicine and the science of it, but it really is that emotional piece that ultimately um, makes me still so passionate about this, because our skin is a reflection not only of our overall health and our well-being physically, but emotionally. What shows up on our skin affects how we feel, and how we feel shows up on our skin. And I was in dermatology for over a decade, and in academics, and doing all the things that I thought that I should do, eating quote unquote healthy. Low, at that time it was low fat and all, and we didn't think in dermatology that diet made a difference with your skin health. I was running ultra marathons and juggling kids and my marriage and a career, and I didn't realize how miserable I was. I didn't realize the impact that stress was having on my body until, you know, I found a spot on my arm that I had to diagnose as melanoma. And I'll tell you that leading up to that, the focus of my career had been skin cancer and melanoma management. I had done a melanoma fellowship. And over the course of a decade, had growing and changing moles that as dermatologists, you think nothing of. You just cut them out because that's what we do. You just cut it out, forget about it. But when I found that one spot, and as a clinical dermatologist, seeing that it was atypical, and then as a dermatopathologist, having to confirm how atypical it was life changing for me. And it really was my wake up call that how I was living was not serving me. That over exercising because I thought it was healthy was not healthy for me. How I was eating was not serving me. How I was working and spending my time and who I was spending my time with was not serving me. So it was a complete shift, and really just turned my world upside down. My mess has become my mission, because I thought, as a physician, if I had no clue how to tune into the messages that my skin and my body were sending me, how is the average woman supposed to understand how to navigate any of this stuff? And my physician colleagues were just throwing pills and things at me, right? Like, I knew there had to be another way. So kind of a long-winded way that, like, a lot of trauma, a lot of crap that happened really paved the way for me, and really makes me so passionate about helping other women feel more comfortable and confident in their skin going forward.
Wow, we're so aligned. And I love how you say that your mess has become my mission because, we all have these challenges in life, right? And we can choose to become a victim and, oh, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? Or say, okay, what's the lesson? What's the gift in this? What do I need to do to make this experience worthwhile for both myself and for others? And I didn't want to be a dermatologist. I wanted to be a pediatrician, and
Oh,
they
wow.
made it. They made me do a specialty clinic one day during a peds rotation, and I was like, I'm pretty intense. So when I want to do something, I was like president of the Peds Society. Everything was peds. My entire medical school career was all pediatrics, and I said, fine, I'll just do dermatology. It's not even like a real doctor.
That's what everyone thinks.
It'll be an easy day, right? So I go to the clinic, and my jaw dropped because I was amazed at how, first of all, it was very procedure oriented. You can, do something where somebody can have immediate gratification and change their self esteem in a moment, which, it's bittersweet because I don't like the fact that like we put so much emphasis on how we look and how it makes us feel, because at the end of the day, it shouldn't really be that way. But we do live in a society where we still have to struggle with that on a daily basis, or until we change the paradigm and have a little bit of a paradigm shift. But I also love the fact that like I could look at people and say, oh, this is a clue as to what's going on inside their body. This person has diabetes because they've got, something like a nodule on their, on their fingers, or, this person has something wrong with their heart, or this person has X, Y, and Z, just by looking at the skin. You don't have to invade anyone or cause pain to be able to, determine that there is a clue to something else going on internally. And what I'm hearing you say with your story, it's even deeper than that. Like skin cancer doesn't just form from the sun. It forms from like, okay, you've got overloaded stress and chaos in your life and an unfair burden of what you're putting on yourself. Even if you're exercising, it might be too much and your body can't handle it. And it's screaming at you and you don't listen.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's huge.
And so when we think about stress, we oftentimes think about like just emotional and mental stress, but really take a broader step back and discuss what they call the exposome, right? It's everything in our environment that was causing stress. So we know that 90, put the derm hat back on for a second, but like 90% of visible signs of aging are from UV exposure, right? People always talk about us being like, sun haters, but we're not sun haters, but we know that UV can damage the skin. I mean, skin cancer is the most prevalent cancer in the United States, and it is so prevalent around the world, like for a reason. But part of that is that immunosuppression, like suppressing our ability to handle the damage that the stress from the sun is creating, that oxidative stress. Add to that, not sleeping well. Add to
Yes,
that
so
stress.
immunosuppression, let's talk about that. So not sleeping well is one of the things that suppresses the immune system. What else?
What else? I mean, we can have a whole conversation
I
just
know.
sleep, because sleep, I would say that beauty sleep is real. If there's anything that, okay, if shout out for like, we can talk about skin products, we can talk and talk about the beauty industry. Oh my God, don't even get me started. We were talking about this earlier. The average American woman is spending upwards of $250,000 on her appearance to look a certain way because society tells us that we should, do all these things. Only 4% of us feel beautiful. 96% of women don't feel beautiful. Like there has to be more to this conversation. And getting your glow does not come from a bottle. It does not come from a bottle. If you really want glowing skin, I think if we're talking lifestyle, the two things that move the needle the most, sleep and managing your stress. Hands down, right? That interplay between melatonin and cortisol, your circadian rhythm, and that sleep and stress hand in hand. Melatonin that we produce only when we sleep is the most potent antioxidant that the body can produce, repairing DNA damage from the sun. This is why sleeping at night, getting quality sleep is so important to rejuvenate your skin.
And you can't make it up.
You can't make it up. You can supplement to help you sleep a little better, but it's not the same as your body's own capacity to generate this on its own.
Right. So regular sleep, not like deficiency all week and then trying to sleep it out on the weekends. You need to have that time to renew and repair and let the body heal itself. We're really just by sleeping, we're allowing the body to support, we're supporting the body to heal itself and
Exactly.
renew itself.
Exactly.
It just
Exactly.
seems boring. It's not sexy enough. It doesn't cost enough. Sleep is just like, oh, we just take it for granted, but it really is. And I feel like sleep and breathing have come to the forefront in the last year and a half so much that I'm
Mhm.
hoping it's becoming more of a common theme that people really need to understand. So, okay, so sleep is really vital. You've mentioned stress quite a bit, and I always think of the presidents, like when the presidents start their term. In 4 years, you never see anyone age that much. So if you want to know what lack of sleep and stress does, just look at how many gray hairs are on our presidents and how much they age over time. And the same, unfortunately, the same is true when people have really difficult life circumstances like a death in the family or a challenging divorce or lots of moving or, some sort of upheaval. And they have a lot of stress, and we all have stress. So it's not necessarily about living a life without stress. It's learning how to manage your stress. So, like, what are some of the tips and tricks that you use? And I know we were going to talk about hormones, but I want to bring up the fact that like stress and cortisol is a hormone and it affects all of the hormones. So, yes.
100%. And like just to support that, when I was really I support midlife women, menopausal women, and I was prescribing bioidentical hormones, and it would all be focused on sex hormones, right? Estrogen, progesterone, DHA, testosterone, and thinking that's going to solve the issue. But that's downstream effect, right? Your thyroid, melatonin is a hormone, vitamin D is a hormone, cortisol hormone, insulin. These are really important. And cortisol, I think, is like, I always think of like as the queen. If that is elevated and there's dysregulation there, it's like dominoes. It's going to knock everything out of balance. This neuroendocrine system, which, formation of cortisol, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, when that's upregulated and sending off all the signals, it's going to mess with your HPT, which is your hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. So your thyroid hormone is going to be out of whack. It's going to mess with your HPG axis, your hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, which is your sex hormones. Your body prioritizes survival. You need cortisol to survive. Our sex hormones are nice to have, they're not a need to have, right?
Yeah. So basically, if you are being chased by a cheetah, your body does not want to prepare to have a baby. So you're not going to have sex hormones made because procreating is not a priority. It's surviving, what Dr. Barr just said. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like, when you are stressed out, and to your point, you made an incredibly powerful and important point. Like, stress is a part of our lives. We need stress to help us avoid danger and harm. The problem isn't that we have stress in our lives, it's our response to it. It's what we make it mean for us. And it's when we are chronically on high alert, which, listen, we're still in a pandemic in many parts of the world. Numbers are going up and down, and it's this uncertainty that creates this ongoing stress, and that has downstream effects, which our skin is a beautiful window to that, right? Women are complaining of massive hair loss, of breakouts, of dark circles under their eyes, of more fine lines and wrinkles. That is information that your skin is giving you, that your body needs a little TLC. It needs your support and is telling you that your hormones are out of balance. And primarily, not just your sex hormones, but it's that elevated cortisol, which is creating challenges with your insulin and blood sugar dysregulation. And, when you say you're being chased by a tiger, yeah, your body is not interested in sex, which would be great because sex is a great stress reliever. So if we can give a shout out to sex, um,
Yeah. So when you're stressed, just have sex. That's what
yeah,
that's what
well,
Dr. Barr is recommending. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
seriously, that is one of my stress relieving remedies.
It
But
is.
that's the challenge, like especially midlife, when your estrogen is declining, and estrogen is this hormone that is amazing for our skin because it is responsible for creating that hyaluronic acid, which hydrates the skin, and collagen formation, which gives it that youthful appearance and keeps us, it plump and uh, vibrant skin. And it's not just your face. So the challenge is, as hormones are declining, not just in midlife, right? When you are stressed, as I mentioned, body's prioritizing formation of cortisol. It's going to, and all your hormones have the same building block, cholesterol. They're going to go down the pathway of forming the stress hormone, which means estrogen, testosterone, GH, they're going to decrease. So estrogen plays a role in hydration of your intimate bits and, the collagen in your intimate bits. So as we mature, as you're, going through menopause, or you're just stressed all the time and your hormones are janky, you may notice that sex becomes painful, that there's more irritation, and the skin is, thinning in
Mhm.
that area. So, um, yeah, it's kind of like it's a catch 22,
It's a
because stress
yeah.
is like, sex is a great stress reliever, but part of that is like you need these hormones in play.
Right. So, okay, let's do a little bit of like action items for people. So, we all have stress. And for me, I came from like a little bit of a traumatic childhood with and a little bit of an anxious attachment disorder. So I tend to be a little more wired. And I went through some neurofeedback training and did some neuroplasticity and worked on reducing my beta waves. And, that's kind of a complex thing for most people to do. So I find, for me and for a lot of people that I work with, just simple breath work, not even anything complex, but like even maybe Dr. Andrew Wiles, like 4-7-8 breath, where you inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, like in the grocery line or while you're driving. Or, while someone's speaking, you can do this slow inhale through your nose, always through your nose for nitric oxide boosting. And then, exhaling slowly. I feel like breath is always a good place to go to, maybe meditation, the sleep. What other tactics what tools do you give people to help them manage stress?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Breath work is always where I start, because when people are feeling stressed, they feel overwhelmed. And if you tell them to meditate, do yoga, journal, they're like, thanks a lot. Like,
I don't have time.
one more thing on my to-do list? Are you effing joking me? No. And so the thing is, like, we're already breathing. You don't have to do anything extra, but most of us aren't paying attention to how we're breathing, and may not even be aware that we are holding our breath when we're stressed. So using that breath as an anchor, I'm with you. I think that is always the first place that I start. And just, yeah, in through your nose, out through your mouth, really just feeling the breath come from your belly, paying attention that it's, you know, a belly breath rather than in your chest. 4-7-8 is a great place. I like to do, keep it simple, like 5-5-5, like, in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5, repeat 5 times. And it's just an easy thing that you can do sitting at a stoplight, or even
Anywhere. Yeah.
physician colleagues, right? Like their hand is on the doorknob before they walk into that patient room, right? Or washing your hands. You can just breathe. Um, I think another one, because sometimes those of us who are a little bit more charged and wired, sitting still feels excruciatingly painful. So another thing is really just putting on your favorite song and just shaking your booty. And no joke, like I have a disco ball, but you don't even need that.
Yeah. I
Just,
love that.
but moving your body, that physical, just breaking up the physical tension. It's what our pets do, right? They something have, they're startled and then they shake it off. Like we
Right.
just need to do that too.
And from a
Taylor Swift,
Chinese
right?
medicine
Like, oh,
perspective, yeah,
yeah.
it's like moving your chi around. Like it's almost like qigong or something, like except in, the disco way. I mean, you're moving your energy. It is a force that sometimes gets stuck. So that's really brilliant. I like that. Who doesn't feel good after dancing? I mean, if you're a
No,
woman, I'm going to say most men don't really like to dance, but maybe they do secretly and they just
I
tell
think
us they
they
don't.
do, because they feel, I think, at least with my husband, like he just feels awkward, because I think when he was told he wasn't a good dancer, but
I
when no
think you're
one's
right.
watching, I catch him shaking his
Right?
thing. What's
Well, you
that?
look at you look at children and they all dance no matter what their sex is. So I do think you're right. We're all meant to have a rhythm. It's pretty fascinating. Okay, I love that dancing and breathing. If you can meditate, that's good, but really breathing. And I love James Nestor's book, Breath, because he really talks about the power of breathing. And the coolest thing is it's free. So like these tools are like they're free and they're accessible. You don't need anything. And I think it's hard. We have to change our mindset to realize that like we don't have to grasp externally for answers. It's within us. So that's a really good tool. Okay, that's good for stress. And I know I got you on the podcast because I wanted to like kind of get all of your some of your information. You have way too much information that you could possibly share in this kind of a timeline. But I want you to talk about how someone, women in particular, can expect like their skin to change through decades, like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, and what they can kind of focus on during that time based on, how hormones change as generalizations. I know it's not medical advice.
Yeah, no, I think, it's a challenge, right? Because the answer is always going to be, it depends what's going on in your life right now, right? Because just because you're 20 and we think that your sex hormone should be robust, if you're stressed, if you're not sleeping, if you're over exercising, if you are in a city where there's a lot of pollution and your environmental exposure and is settling on your skin, there's a lot of factors that make it, we have to individualize what you might need to do.
Well, you said earlier that, like, the extrinsic factors or the
Right?
external factors as opposed to the intrinsic factors, like we when I was training, they told, it's all genetics. Well, it's your genetics. And now looking at twin studies, we realize that like 10-15% is your genetics, and the rest you actually have control over, as opposed to like, oh, it's my environment. No, you have control over your environment. So that's what you're saying. If 85-90% is your environment, that's going to really change what's going on.
Yeah. So, that idea of genetics versus epigenetics, how you're living your life. And, in our 20s, I think the best advice that I wish I had gotten, and that was when we were medical, in our medical training and things, was knowing that 90% of visible signs of aging are sun related, is start wearing sunscreen, moisturizer with sunscreen, and tinted moisturizer, right? Because
Yes.
it's not just like, here I am in front of my computer's in front of a window. UVA rays, the quote unquote aging rays that penetrate more deeply into your skin, that destroy your collagen and your elastin, they penetrate window glass.
Yep.
So even if you're indoors, you're still getting exposure if you sit by a window.
Or
And then,
driving.
or driving, right? Which is amazing, right? Those pictures where the left, depending on what country you're in, your driver's side is going to be more hyperpigmented, more wrinkled, more sun damaged than your non-driving side.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the blue light from our devices, more research is coming out that blue light can be contributing to dyspigmentation and damaging our supportive connective tissue as well. So a tinted moisturizer that has iron oxides is going to be beneficial. And rain, shine, winter, summer, you need to protect your skin.
Yeah. I used to, when I was in clinic all the time, people would say, I only put sunscreen on when I'm outside. And I would say, okay, well, and I didn't even account for the light through the window when they're driving, which, you know, clinically, most men, because they don't have the hair to protect, they'd get skin cancers right in front of their ear and right behind the neck of their ear and on their left ear in the United States, right in England. And I would say, okay, well, you're probably outside, maybe 10 minutes a day, walking the dog, getting the mail, going to and from buildings. And they're like, yeah, probably about 10 minutes, but that's not much. And I said, okay, well, if your face and your neck and your chest and the back of your hands are exposed for 10 minutes a day, maybe 6 days a week, that's an hour a week, 52 hours a year. Would you go to the beach for 52 hours and not wear sunscreen? And they're like, no. I go, that's why. That's what's happening to your skin, because it's a compound effect. Everything adds up over time, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So zinc oxide, titanium oxide, iron oxide in a good quality sunscreen. If you don't need a flashlight outside, you need to be having your sunscreen on. Even if you're at home in front of the computer,
Yeah,
especially for those of us like me that have melasma, it will help with the pigmentation. So that's
right.
a great tip. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
great tip.
I think, in terms of just getting into a routine in our young 20s, right? I like to keep things simple. I am the physician who is like the least compliant. Like it has to be stupid simple or I'm not doing it.
Same.
Um, so like, and there's all these skincare products, and I'm like, that's great. I'm never going to use a fraction of them. Three things. It's like a gentle cleanser, an antioxidant serum, and your moisturizer with sunscreen in the morning, and then at night, cleanse your face, that antioxidant serum, vitamin C, vitamin E. There's other things that you could add in there, and then a topical retinoid. Now, in your 20s, you may, I mean, the earlier you can start with that regimen, the better. But really, starting in your 30s is when the cumulative sun exposure that you've had is going to start to show itself with the more sun damaged spots, like the pigmentation, and you're going to start to notice the early signs of crow's feet. That's a great time to add those things into your regimen. I think topical retinoids, and if and topical retinoids, the caveat is for those of us with sensitive skin, they may be really irritating. So there's over-the-counter varieties, but if you're going to get a prescription strength, start low, go slow, use it maybe just a few times a week, once or twice, that green pea size amount, dividing to your face, rubbing it in, washing off in the morning. But it can make you more sun sensitive. Again, reinforcing that you need sun protection on a daily
What do you
basis.
think of bakuchiol?
So bakuchiol, I was just going to mention that.
Oh,
So for those of us with more sensitive skin, thankfully, in the recent past and current scenario is bakuchiol's come to the forefront as an alternative to topical retinoids. And there was a head-to-head study done by a fellow dermatologist looking at bakuchiol and topical retinoids and found that bakuchiol had the same efficacy without the irritation that topical retinoids can cause. And, we worry about topical retinoids not being safe in pregnancy, right? Because when taken by mouth, vitamin A derivatives are category X. Topical use so little, the likelihood that it's getting absorbed and is going to cause issues is really probably next to nothing. But we always proceed with caution. So bakuchiol becomes a nice alternative because it doesn't have that risk profile.
yeah. Thank you for that. That's great. So I just want to summarize. So, what Kira's saying is basically, clean your face, get the dirt off from, all of the external environmental toxins from the day. And then in the morning, our skin has the purpose of protection from environmental toxins and environmental hazards. So we want to support the protection with a vitamin C and E product, a well-made product that's stable and that's going to actually get to where it needs to be in the skin. And then always, always, always sunscreen, physical sunscreen, avoid the chemical sunscreen, SPF 30 or higher with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide plus iron oxide as a backup plan to wearing a hat and some protective clothing, which I think you have a clothing line as well
Well, I
because
know, well,
you have
that was
too much
one.
free time. And then we'll get to that. And then
Yeah.
at night, we want to do a retinoid if your skin is too sensitive from a retinoid, like a retinol or prescription strength tretinoin or retin-A or something like that. And then you do it after moisturizing is what you like, right? Or a bakuchiol is the other option.
Yeah. And sometimes like if if you're not using something like Nova, but to mix the topical retinoid with a little moisturizer, if you need to support the drying irritation. But yeah.
Yeah, so it works by cell signaling. So you don't have to get a ton of the product on your face. We just want it to be touching the skin cells and without causing the irritation. So don't feel like you need full coverage like with a moisturizer. I think that's the biggest mistake we see is too much. People are using it too much of it.
So we always talk about like that small green pea size amount. A little bit goes a long way.
I have a funny story. I had a pharmacy call me the other day because when I write it for boys with acne, I write apply a pea-sized amount to your whole face. And basically you put a pea on your finger, dot your forehead, dot each your cheeks, and then your chin and blend it around, trying to avoid the creases of your nose and your mouth. But for women, like for anti-aging or for, reversing sun damage, I'd rather use that word than anti-aging because we're not afraid of aging, are we?
No,
Um,
thank you. We are aging.
I know. I write apply a pearl sized amount. So I use the word pearl instead of pea. And the pharmacy called me like, is there a mistake? I said, no. I said, a pearl and a pea are the same size. It's just a different term. It's the funniest thing. So, okay. So I'm sorry, back on track. So I think I have that covered. Did I cover that properly for like
Yeah.
20s, 30s? Okay.
Yeah. And so then starting in our mid to late 30s for women, again, if you're not sleeping, if you're really stressed out, your sex hormones may be a little janky beforehand. And you may notice this with, if your periods are really heavy or longer, more PMS symptoms, that's a sign that your hormones are out of balance. And usually, what that is a sign of is that your progesterone is low. And cortisol, again, when that stress hormone cortisol goes up, it really knocks down the production of your sex hormones, and progesterone is one of them. And progesterone helps to counterbalance the effects of estrogen. So a lot of the heavy bleeding and the cramping and all of that, it's a relative estrogen dominant picture. And I learned this the hard way. I did not know that when I was running marathons and I was having my period for like 6 weeks afterwards and cramping, and I was miserable, my boobs hurt, and I was bloated. And my doctors didn't say, "Hey, girl, you progesterone, you want a little skosh of progesterone?" I would have been like, "Yes, please." But no one talked to me about this. And
Yeah,
ultimately, I wound up with a hysterectomy because it was just a snowball effect of so many things. Again, why I'm so passionate, why my mess has become a mission to openly talk about this stuff. There's no shame in talking about these normal experiences that we have, but there are
absolutely.
solutions. There are solutions. But as you're in our mid to late 30s, naturally, progesterone is starting to decline. It is the first sex hormone to really start to diminish. So this is also why, if you've never been anxious before in your 30s and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm feeling more anxious," or "I'm not sleeping as well," it's that role that progesterone plays as the great calmer. It helps our bodies to relax. It's
It's
why
natural Xanax.
it is, and it's why they're, yeah, in psychiatry they were using progesterone, and also during childbirth, why progesterone elevates in the latter half, so you can relax all the muscles and ligaments, so you can deliver this beautiful child.
Mm.
Um, and there's an interplay with GABA, which is a neurochemical that also helps calm and relax. So as progesterone is going down, you may feel a little more anxious, maybe a little bit more challenging for you to go to sleep. Progesterone plays a role. It's not in the literature as has been studied as much for skin hydration, and but it is thought to play a role. Um, Starting in your early mid 40s, then your estrogen is starting to decrease. And as I mentioned, estrogen plays a role in skin hydration and collagen formation. So your skin may appear more dry and flaky, a little bit more sensitive and irritated. Or hormones do play a role in maintaining the skin microbiome or gut microbiome. Estrogen plays a significant role in we call it the estrobolome, but like the gut microbiome. And we know that there's a significant gut skin connection. So as all these hormones, everything is connected. So you may notice in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond that as your hormones are diminishing, that your skin becomes more sensitive, more dry. And so the same recommendations of cleansing, antioxidants, and rejuvenation apply, but you may need to look for products that have additional ingredients that are hydrating, like hyaluronic acid, glycerin, aloe, sensitive, quote unquote, sensitive skin type products that you may have not needed before.
Gosh, I have so many questions. Okay. So when someone is sort of perimenopausal and they may have more of an estrogen dominance, like you talked about with your experience, and I have so many patients and so many friends that have had laser ablations of their uterus because of those heavy periods. And just like the skin, I feel like, hey, that's a sign of something else going on, right? Like, let's figure out why our bodies are doing that. And you and I think this way because we've gone through these experiences ourselves, and we're kind of curious people, and we're not just going to accept the norm.
Right?
So and that's why we want to share all this information, on my podcast and your new podcast coming out as well, so that people can be empowered to like ask questions and maybe change some of the things they're doing, so they're not going through the health issues that they're going through, or opt and also to feel their best self. But when people have that kind of not necessarily, well, I guess it's low progesterone or estrogen dominance, do you think it's because the progesterone is dropping, or do you feel also that there are environmental hormone disruptors that are also increasing the estrogen? Because I feel like there has to be a two-pronged approach, like maybe support with some bioidentical progesterone, but also take a look at like avoiding plastics and pesticides and phthalates and things like that. So what's your approach with that?
Yeah, 100%. I would never go directly to hormone supplementation. First, we're going to look at lifestyle, especially for a younger woman. And there are women who are in their mid to late 30s, they may lose their period for a while. They think they're in menopause, right? Menopause, by definition, is 12 months without a menstrual cycle. And the average age of menopause is about 51. But perimenopause, the time leading up to menopause, can last anywhere from 4 to 10 years. And, you know, symptoms of menopause: hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, joint aches, headaches, bloating. These are not things that you necessarily have to suffer through. There are root causes for these things that can be, looked for, evaluated for, and a lot of it has to do with our lifestyle. The solution is not just here's some bioidentical hormones, because I can tell you this is why I've kind of shifted the focus of how I want to support women, because I was giving them the hormones. I personally am on bioidentical hormones. They play a role. Cardioprotective estrogen plays such a significant role for our brain health, our bone health, our vaginal health, our cardiovascular health. It's important. But even with that, women still aren't sleeping. They're still feeling stressed. Their libido is in the crapper. So we have to look at what is happening in our life. Really look at what are we truly hungry for? How can we bring more pleasure and joy? And as you mentioned, what are we bringing into our homes? What are we putting onto our skin? Things that can disrupt our body's natural balance. That's where we start. We start with those major pillars, right? Nutrition. I always call it tapping into our senses, right? So sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress, environment, skin, and, sex. Because again, if we can get you going and in the mood, greatest stress reliever ever.
It's a life force. It's our life
It
force.
really is. Whether with a partner or not with a partner, listen, again, as you pointed out, it all comes from within. If we don't know how to enjoy ourselves and, give ourselves pleasure, we will never experience the true joy that we're capable of if we are always looking outside ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up such a great point because everything you're talking about are, they're great tips, but what I'm hearing is listen to yourself. Like, what do you need? Because I mean, for at least 30 years of my life, I was living in a you should, like this, what I call the should world. Finally, I said, whoa, what do I need? Okay, what do I want? Because when you live in that should world, you're doing things that you think other people want you to do. You end up resenting them because you're doing things that they don't even really want you to do them, But if you honor yourself and you consider others, that's really the best place to be in. So do you find like people's libidos go up when they start honoring their own inner child and taking care of themselves?
100%.
Right?
So, this is a lot of the work that I've done with mind body medicine and mindfulness. 100%. Like, why are you not in the mood? Why are you not orgasming? Like, during sex, if you're thinking about the dishes or like what you got to do afterwards, you're not in the present moment. Exquisite pleasure happens by just being here now. Like, this is where life happens. And so if we can give ourselves permission, because shit, no one's going to give it to us. We have to give ourselves permission to just let it go.
Right. Yeah, I
And
read somewhere
it's
that like,
so
oh, go
hard.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's hard. But to
Yeah.
your point, this shoulding, coulding, woulding, like, I think especially as women, we have been socialized to believe that we should act, look, feel, do certain things certain ways. And it is so hardwired that we believe it to be true.
Right. Yeah, but there's nothing more sexy or more admirable or more beautiful than someone who is just comfortable in their own skin. You can see it from a mile away. Like I've always noticed this since I was a child, just looking at people. And some people, they have this what I call an understated confidence. Like they're just secure and comfortable with who they are. And that's really the most beautiful thing that you can be because it's really a lot of spinning wheels to try to be someone else. Like, and you're never going to be as good as being yourself. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. If we look at kids, right? Kids just tummies out, tushies out, cellulite, like they just shake it. They're just being them. And they
Yeah.
spread around, they don't question. They just, like they try and walk, they fall down, they run, they fall, like they just go for it
Right.
unapologetically. When did we stop doing that as adults, right? And as women, we start, like, I've got a teenage daughter, and I can tell you this shit starts too early, where we
Hmm.
start censoring ourselves, and like it's I agree, like nothing is more beautiful than someone who is unapologetically just showing up like themselves, and it's
Yeah, just
so good for their
embrace.
health too. Like, and it doesn't, you don't need to be a certain body size or body shape or anything.
No, they're really not, and um yeah, when you love all your friends, you don't think about like, oh, well, that friend is has better hair and that friend has, a better body. I never think of it that way. You just love them for like their soul and just showing up as their authentic self. So I want to go back to the sex thing though too, because as you're talking, I'm thinking that might be like that's probably plays a big role on why women have a hard time orgasming is if they're not comfortable with yourself. So it all comes back to embracing yourself because if you can be yourself, be in the moment, because looking in the past is depressive, looking into the future is anxious, being in the moment is all we have, then you actually open yourself up to like pure pleasure
Right. And if
if you're
you're,
not concerned about your looks, right?
I was just going to say, if
Yeah.
when you give yourself permission to just be in the moment, you are not worrying about your cellulite, you're not worrying about your jiggly butt or your saggy boobs or whatever. No. And nor is your partner, if you're having sex with a partner. They're not looking at that.
Men do
Yeah,
not notice cellulite. Men don't notice things that women notice. We're
unless we
so
point it out. So we've got to stop pointing that out. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I mean, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Lori Brotto. She is a PhD who's written a whole book on this, Better Sex Through Mindfulness. She's taken John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction
Mm,
paradigm and, turned it to sex. And it's a great book to read, but it really boils down to number one, we have to get comfortable with ourselves and learning how to experience pleasure, not just sexual pleasure in the moment, but like as simple as like peeling vegetables is therapeutic. Or like
or like the breeze on my face. I love the breeze on my face
exactly.
when it's a little chilly. I love that feeling.
Or Dr. Brother talks about like in the shower, just experience, just like the water falling on your body, the temperature of the water, like
Mm.
just, just the scent of, I'm like imagining right now, like the scent of your clean shampoo. Like, but whatever. I mean, we could drive ourselves crazy trying to do all the right things, clean this
Right.
up. We do the best that we can, but when it comes to sex, I think it's challenging because as women, especially in midlife, things are changing. If your androgen levels are going down, just giving testosterone is not going to boost your sex drive, right? Increasing your estrogen can help, especially if you are experiencing vaginal dryness. There is thinning of the skin, and sex is uncomfortable. There are lubricants that you can use. Now, there's new products with CBD even to help rebalance our endocannabinoid system. Like there are options.
Hmm.
But the biggest obstacle to sex is our brains.
Yeah. So if you're healthy and you have a good mindset, your libido should be there, really.
It should. Like,
Okay.
like it definitely will improve. Obviously,
Hmm.
there's no underlying medical conditions,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I mean, and feeling safe and secure with
Yes.
who you're with.
Of course. And I think the cycle that happens is sex might be a little uncomfortable, so then women don't do it, and the yoni, the vagina, whatever I'm allowed to say on here, is a muscle. I know we're doctors, we're used to talking about everything comfortably, but it's a
Right.
muscle, and if you don't use it, it atrophies and then becomes more and more painful. So how do you break that cycle? Do you, besides making sure estrogen is adequate, are there like certain things that you recommend? Like I know there's like the fem and other lasers out there. There's the V-Fit. Joy Lux makes the V-Fit, which is a beautiful device with red light. um there's so many, there's the O shot. And then like, what do you recommend? And I also want you to touch on why sex is so important for your hormones and how it helps, you give you that beautiful radiant glow that we all want in our skin, right? Because it cycles through.
Yeah. So it really depends on what the challenge is. Like for me, I had endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, all the things. So after a hysterectomy, I was working with a pelvic physiotherapist to help, and doing Pilates to help strengthen my pelvic floor. So it could be multifactorial. It depends on what the individual challenge might be. You know, laser, there's so many different laser devices, radio frequency and other things. The VFit is great. It's kind of like a bridge, right? Probably unless things are fairly mild, you may need to have other um, interventions first and then follow up with the VFit. I mean, I've had what did I have? The Diva
Okay.
treatment. And then I use the VFit as well. I also do Pilates on a regular basis, and I'm
Pilates is
doing
great.
it is for so many different reasons. It really was the game changer and healed all my pain because I wasn't pounding. And here's the thing: it's always goes back to tuning into what your body needs. There's some people who CrossFit works for them, more power to you. But if you are doing something like CrossFit and it's hurting, listen to your body. Listen to your body. Your body is talking to you all the time.
Yeah.
So it may be an experimentation process of like, I always think of it as like, especially even with mind body practices and different supplements, like it's like going to the department store and shopping or what have you. And
Right? Just because that dress looks good on you doesn't mean it's gonna look good on me. Just
right, exactly.
because
You take everything else right. You bring it into the dressing room, and sometimes you look at it and you're like, hell no, I'm not even going to try that on. Or you try it on, it doesn't fit you right, and then you find the one thing. Even if you find the one thing that you love, just do that and see how that
Mhm.
feels, and then you can move on. But like you said earlier, it's a compound effect for everything. Cumulative sun damage, but it's also a compound effect for taking steps to improve our overall health and well-being. There's so much information out there, and we've talked about so much information, it can feel overwhelming. So choose just one thing that you can commit to, right? Maybe it's going to bed 15 minutes earlier every night until you can dial your bedtime back so you're getting at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep if you can, or drinking one more glass of water a day, or going outside in the early morning to get bright morning sunlight to reset that, keep your circadian rhythm on target, or date night, like whatever it is for you, just pick the one thing.
Yeah. That's well said, well said. Um, well, I've taken so much of your time, I could talk to you
I know,
easily for
it's like,
another hour.
I know, right? Me too.
Before I let you go, though, can you tell me why sex is so good for your
Oh
skin?
yeah. Oh yeah. Sex. Let's get back to it. A couple of reasons. You had mentioned earlier about nitric oxide, right? So nitric oxide vasodilation, get the blood circulating, give us that nice flush, the nice glow. Oxytocin is another hormone,
Mm,
that love hormone from touch, and creates a sense of bonding and connection. It lowers cortisol levels. And cortisol is, we talked about messing with your sex hormones, but for your skin specifically, when cortisol is elevated, it breaks down your collagen and your elastin. So the result is more fine lines, wrinkles, skin sag. And it also stimulates your oil glands. So acne breakouts and other things. Sex is a great stress reliever. So it helps modulate the levels of your cortisol. So you want better skin, have sex.
good sex
Um,
with a trusting partner. Yeah.
or yourself. I'm like, girls,
Well,
you know
that's
what
a
I
trusting
mean?
partner.
The heck, yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. So those are just a few of the reasons, but modulating that stress response, um, elevation of nitric oxide, and that oxytocin, that love hormone.
I love that. Do you have time for one more question? I'm,
Oh
I'm keeping
yeah.
you over. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, so if you had five top supplements for women,
Mm,
and I know there's always the what ifs and stuff like that, but what are your top five? Like I definitely have top two that I think everyone should take, but what are your top five if you can
yeah, let's
recommend
see.
any top five? And I'm going to say for women in this podcast.
Yeah. So I think especially even with everything with immune, we were talking about immunity, vitamin D for mood, for immunity, for bone health, for our skin health, right? Our is supposed to generate vitamin D, but based on where we live, latitude and longitude, the vast majority of us are not getting enough UVB rays that are going to convert to the functional level that we need them to for vitamin D. So I would say vitamin D. Um, I would say probiotic.
Any
And
particular? Because
well,
we don't know. We don't
really
know.
hard because I have done the stool testing on myself, and I found that the mucinophilic bacteria that should help, coat that gut lining, what I was Akkermansia was like 0. So I'm actually taking uh, it's a product that only has Akkermansia, so I'm taking that and a multi-strain probiotic.
Okay.
So it really depends. So there are some, usually it's multi-strain. The more units you can get, right? Like
Right. The more
that
variety in so if
more
someone
variety.
doesn't have the stool testing, because what I do, because I haven't had testing, is I usually will rotate. Like I'll get a lot of one and then I'll rotate to a different bottle and I just kind of rotate so I could just fill it
Yeah,
up. I don't,
and I think that's a good approach. I mean,
we don't know yet, right?
I don't think we know enough. We certainly don't.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing, magnesium is another big one.
Yeah. Huge.
Magnesium, especially at night, magnesium is a nutrient that we need for over 400 functions in our body, but especially if you are challenged with sleep, magnesium relaxes the muscle. It really does help, especially at night, um, to promote more restful sleep. So I would say magnesium. Um,
Is there a
uh,
form or a form of magnesium you like?
Yeah, so if you're constipated, magnesium citrate is always a good one, but
Mhm.
I like magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate. So, but probably I usually tend towards magnesium glycinate at night.
Okay.
Omega-3 fatty acids, even though I eat a lot of fish for anti-inflammatory omega-3s. Uh, how many is that?
It's
There's so many
four.
or I'm because of the stress response, I'm a big proponent of adaptogens. So
Yes.
I take it, and there are blends. So ashwagandha is probably the most well known, and rhodiola, but rhodiola can be a little bit energizing. So if
It,
you are
yeah.
struggling, like if you're not getting good sleep and you feel like you're a little sluggish in the morning, um, a blend that has ashwagandha and rhodiola in the morning, but I wouldn't take that again in the afternoon. In the evening, I have a blend that's like ashwagandha, lemon balm, lavender, and some others to help calm. So I think adaptogens are in my tops as
I
well.
love that so much. I love your list. I completely agree. And then maybe like two Brazil nuts a day for the selenium and
Yes, I know.
sometimes
I love.
and, but yeah, I'm on par with all of that. I love it. I love it so much. But just because especially the magnesium, it's amazing how many um people I recommend magnesium for and then they just feel better. Like for my acne patients, I'll sometimes do like indole 3 carbamate, like the dim with magnesium to kind of help clean things out. And then they're like, I feel so good from the magnesium. I'm like, yeah, that's a great side effect. So I think that's great. Well, I just loved having you on the podcast. I'm going to have all of Dr. Barr's information in the show notes. Please read her book. It's amazing, The Skin Whisperer, and tune into her new podcast, which is called
The skinny dipping prescription. Are we gonna
This.
strip it all down? So much of the stuff that we talked about, such an overlap. I cannot wait to have you as a guest.
I can't wait to be on. Thank you. And we'll have a link to her podcast in the show notes as well. And before I let you go, I have one more question I ask everyone. How do you define radiance?
I think we touched on it.
I think
It's
so too.
that having that self-love and giving yourself permission to just be you.
Mm, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Kira.
My pleasure.